On the third day of my kidnapping, the kidnapper's boss suddenly knelt in front of me and cried and begged me not to run away. I thought I was hallucinating. They not only brought me hot food, but also loosened the rope that tied me. And the kidnapper boss stood in front of me with his face as white as paper. He said, "Miss Shi, please, don't get hurt. If you lose a hair, Jiang Qingyan will kill us all." When I heard the name Jiang Qingyan, my finger paused slightly. Jiang Qingyan and I are not familiar with each other, at least as far as I can remember. We only met 3 times. The first time was at the banquet of the Shi family. He sat at the main table and didn't even give me a look. The second time was in the hospital corridor. He passed by me and only asked, "Are you Shi Su?" The third time was half a month ago. The Shi family asked me to attend a charity dinner for Shi Wan. I was wearing a dress that Shi Wan didn't want, standing in the corner, and heard someone whispering, "That's the adopted daughter of the Shi family. It looks good. But it's a pity that it's just a stand-in." Jiang Qingyan was also there that night. He glanced at me from a distance. I thought it was just a stranger's gaze. Now Qin Bei told me that Jiang Qingyan threatened the lives of all the kidnappers for me. I raised my head and looked at Qin Bei. What else did he say? Qin Bei swallowed. Several kidnappers behind him lowered their heads, and no one dared to look at me. It was cold in the warehouse. There was the sound of rain on the tin roof, falling one by one. There is water on the ground and moldy cardboard boxes in the corners. I've been here for 3 days. On the first day, they dragged me out of the car and blindfolded me with a black cloth. The next day, they forced me to record a video and told me that I was scared and asked the Shi family to take money in exchange for me. But I know that the Shi family will not save me, because I am not the biological daughter of the Shi family. I am a child they adopted. In the eyes of outsiders, I am a lucky orphan girl. After my parents died in a car accident, the Shi family gave me a house, a school and a surname. But only I know that my place in the Shi family has never been my daughter. I am the shadow of Shi Wan. Shi Wan was not in good health and couldn't stay up late. So I went to socialize for her. Shi Wan didn't want to offend anyone, so I refused for her. Shi Wan didn't want to face danger, so I stood up for her. Shi's mother always said, "Xiao Su, Wan is weak. You let her do more." Shi's father always said, "You can have today. It was given to you by the Shi family." So I learned to shut up. But just because I don't have eyes doesn't mean I don't have eyes. I have been listening to them since the kidnapping. I heard them mention Mr. Liu. I heard them say that the final payment would not come until my face was ruined. I also heard them say that the other party had specifically explained that I couldn't die too quickly. Now, Jiang Qingyan suddenly appeared. The situation has changed, but the people who really want to harm me are still hiding behind. Qin Bei took another step closer to me. His voice lowered. "Mr. Jiang said that he gave us 2 choices. First, hand you over intact. Second, he came to collect the body himself." I looked at him. "Whose body is collected?" Qin Bei's lips trembled. I laughed. It was the first time in 3 days that I laughed. Qin Bei was so frightened that he retreated. "Miss Shi, don't laugh. You laugh like this. I'm afraid." I looked down at my wrist. The rope has been loosened, but there are reddish-purple strangulation marks on it. I asked him, "What did you plan to do with me?" Qin Bei didn't speak. I looked at a tall and thin kidnapper next to me. He immediately lowered his head. I said, "I can still sit here because of Jiang Qingyan, but if I didn't know the truth, he couldn't protect me 24 hours a day. If you want to live, just tell me." Qin Bei was silent for a long time. Then he said, "The other party wants us to destroy your face and throw you out of the city." My heart felt cold, but I didn't show fear. "Why the face?" Qin Bei shook his head. "I don't know. The other party only said, your face is too eyesore. It's too an eyesore." I immediately thought of Shi Wan. Shi Wan is the biological daughter of the Shi family. She grew up being held by others, and even if she was not in good health, everyone revolved around her. But she hates it when others say I look like her. Once, an old friend of the Shi family came as a guest, looked at me and said, "When Xiao Su grows up, he is even more beautiful than Wan." That night, Shi Wan dropped a whole table of medicine. She cried and asked Shi Mu, "Why did you bring her back? Why should I let her stand next to me?" Shi's mother hugged her and coaxed her all night. The next day, I was sent to boarding school. Shi's mother said, Wan is in a bad mood. Don't come back for the time being." That year, I was 15 years old. I began to understand that I didn't do anything wrong in this family. It is my very existence which is wrong. I retracted my thoughts and continued to ask, "Who is the contact?" Qin Bei frowned. "It's not a direct contact. We only do things with money. The middleman keeps changing the number." "What about the sound? There are men and women. What is the woman's voice?" Qin Bei thought for a while. "Very light. It seems that he is not very healthy." When she spoke, someone next to her called her Wan. My fingers slowly tightened. Sure enough, I'm not surprised. It's not surprising. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. I was raised by the Shi family for 17 years. I have been blocking trouble for Shi Wan for 17 years. The last thing she wanted was to ruin my face. There was a sudden sound of cars outside the warehouse. Not a car. There are many. The kidnappers changed T air faces at the same time. Someone ran to the door to take a look, and when they came back, their legs were weak. Brother Bei, it's Jiang Qingjian's person. Qin Bei immediately looked back at me. He seemed to see the last lifeline. Miss Shi, help us say something. We didn't really hurt you. Really? We didn't touch you afterwards. That I looked at them. You beat me on the first day. Several kidnappers turned pale. That's right. That's because we don't know. Don't you know that Jiang Qingyan is behind me? I finished speaking for them. No one answered. I stood up, my legs a little numb from being tied for a long time. Qin Bei wanted to help me, but he didn't dare to touch me. I stand firm against the wall myself. The warehouse door was open from the outside. The cold wind swept in. The sound of rain gets louder. A group of men in black rushed in and pinned all the kidnappers to the ground. The last man to come in was wearing a black coat. He is tall, with straight shoulders and no expression on his face. Everyone in the warehouse bowed their heads. Only I looked at him. Jiang Qingyan walked up to me. His eyes fell on my face, and then on my wrist. His eyes changed in an instant, like a calm ice crack. He asked me, "Where does it hurt?" His voice was low, but I heard it clearly. I said, "It doesn't hurt." He raised his hand, as if to touch my wrist, but when he was about to touch me, he stopped. He asked, "Is it okay?" I looked at him and nodded. He gently held my wrist. His hands were cold, but the action is light. Qin Bei was pressed to the ground, with dirty water on his forehead, and he didn't dare to say a word. Jiang Qingyan looked at him. That glance was very light. Qin Bei was shaking. Jiang Qingyan said, "Who tied her up?" Qin Bei hurriedly said, "Mr. Jiang, we can say anything, as long as you spare our lives." Jiang Qingyan did not answer. He looked at me. "What do you want to do?" I was a little surprised. I thought he would decide directly. After all, in the eyes of everyone, Jiang Qingyan never asks others. I looked at Qin Bei on the ground, and then at the kidnappers. They deserve to pay, but now, they can't die. A living witness is more useful than a dead body. I said, "Don't touch them yet. I need them alive." Jiang Qingyan looked at me for a few seconds. Then he said, "Okay," with just one word. All the men in black stopped moving. At that moment, I understood why Qin Bei was afraid of him. Jiang Qingyan is here, indeed like a person who can decide life and death, but he just gave me the choice. I looked down at Qin Bei. "If you want to live, write down everything you know. Time, place, number, account, middleman, one word less. I won't speak for you again." Qin Bei nodded immediately. "Right. I'll write it right away." Jiang Qingyan took off his coat and draped it over my shoulders. I didn't refuse. After 3 days of cold, the temperature brought by this garment made my fingertips sore. Jiang Qingyan said, "I'll take you to the hospital." I shook my head. "Go back to Shi's house first." He frowned. "You need to check now." I know. I looked at the rain outside the warehouse. But they must be waiting for my news. I want to see who is most afraid of me going back alive. Jiang Qingyan was silent. He did not agree. I can see it. But in the end, he still said, "I'll accompany you." I said, "No." His eyes sank slightly. I continued, "You can just send me to the doorstep. I'll do the things inside." He looked at me as if he was really knowing me for the first time. After a long time, he said, "Okay." When the car stopped outside Shi's house, it was almost dark. At that time, the villa was brightly lit. There were servants, bodyguards, and a few doctors who had been called outside. It seems they are really worried about me. If I hadn't just come out of the warehouse, I might have believed it. The doors open. I stepped on the cold ground and got out of the car. Jiang Qingyan sat in the car and did not get out. I knew he was giving me space. He is also telling me that as long as I turn back, he will be there. The gate opens. At that time, my mother was the first to rush out. She cried and hugged me. "Xiao Su, you are finally back. You scared your mother to death." The smell of perfume on her body is very strong. I was held by her, my face against her shoulder, but her hand didn't touch my wound. She didn't even ask me if it hurt. Shi's father stood behind, his face heavy. "Just come back. Don't talk about this matter anymore. The family will deal with it." I didn't speak. My gaze passed them and looked at Shi, who was standing at the entrance of the stairs. She was wearing a white nightdress. Her face was pale, and her eyes were red, like a flower damaged by the wind. She slowly walked down and threw herself into my arms crying, "Sister, I'm really worried about you." She hugged tightly. "When others see it, they will only think that we are sisters." But the next second, she put her face close to my ear. Her voice was soft, so light that only I could hear it. She said, "Sister, why didn't you die outside?" I didn't push her away. I even raised my hand to hug her. I put my hand on her back and patted her gently. Then I replied in a low voice, "Because damn man, he is not dead yet." Shirwan's body stiffened suddenly. I let go of her and smiled at her. At that moment, my phone rang. That was the new mobile phone Jiang Qingyan had just given me. There is only a strange text message on the screen. "Don't believe the Shi family. Your parents' car accident was not an accident." I stared at the text message for a long time. "Don't trust the family of the time. Your parents' car accident was not an accident." My fingers tightened little by little. In fact, I have been waiting for this sentence for many years. From the day I woke up at the age of 7, I felt something was wrong. After that car accident, Everyone told me that I was the only survivor. They said that my parents drove too fast and the road was slippery in the rain, so they crashed into the guardrail. They said that the Sure family and my parents were old friends, and they adopted me because they saw me pitiful. They also said I should be grateful. I was too young to trust them. But as I grew up, there were more and more doubts. Why was their company quickly taken over by Shurja at a low price after the death of their parents? Why did all the news related to car accidents disappear? Why does every time I ask my parents, my father will sink his face and tell me not to mention it again? Now, I was finally told that it was not an accident. But who is this person? Jiang Qingyan. Nope, the SMS number is not his. When I looked up, Shirwan was looking at me. Her eyes quickly withdrew and became weak again. Sister, what's wrong with you? Is it uncomfortable somewhere? I turned off my phone. It's okay. At that time, my father came over. He didn't look at my injuries, only my face, confirming that my face was not ruined. He was obviously relieved. This subtle expression made my heart even colder. What he was afraid of was not that something would happen to me. What he was afraid of was that after my accident, the Sure family would not end well. At that time, my father said, "Go first. The doctor has arrived." I followed them through the door. There were 2 doctors, a nurse, and a few servants standing in the living room. My mother sat next to me and held my hand. Her tears were still on her face. "Xiaoxiu, tell your mother. Who tied you up?" I looked at her. "I don't know." At that time, my father frowned. "You didn't see it at all. I was blindfolded." "Did they say anything?" "No." My father stared at me, as if he wanted to see if I was lying. I lowered my head and pretended to be tired. "I'm tired. I want to rest." Sher's mother immediately said, Okay, let the doctor see it first." The doctor examined my wrist and shoulder. He moves quickly and calmly. Unlike the reaction of ordinary doctors when they see a kidnapping victim, he was more like confirming something. After the examination, he said, "It's just a skin injury. No serious problems." Sher's father asked, "What about her mental state?" The doctor glanced at me. "If you are frightened, you may have memory confusion. It is best not to be stimulated in the near future." I sneered in my heart. Memory is confused. These 4 words came so quickly. As soon as I returned, they were ready to shut me up. Sher's father nodded. "Then tell the outside world that Xiaoxiu just went out to relax and lost his mobile phone, so he couldn't contact him. Don't mention kidnapping again." I looked up. Why? The living room is quiet. At that time, his mother's face changed. "Xiaoxiu, how can you ask that? It's also for your own good. The girl was kidnapped and it didn't sound good to say it." I looked at her. "I am a victim. The person who doesn't sound good should be the one who kidnapped me." At that time, my mother choked on me. At that time, my father's face sank. "Shirshu, you just came back. I don't want to fight with you. The family cannot have such a scandal. You were raised by the Sure family, so you should be sensible." It's sensible again. Every time they want me to be wronged, they will make me sensible. I lowered my eyes. "I know." At that time, my father's face softened a little. "That's right. You go back to your room to rest first. Tomorrow night is Wanwan's engagement banquet with Lu Qing. You don't have to attend." Sure Wan immediately said, "Dad, sister just came back. Let her rest. I don't want her to be too tired," she said gently, but in the way she looked at me, there was a clear warning. She didn't want me to show up. "Then I must go." I stood up. "I will participate." The smile on Sherwan's face froze for a moment. Sher's mother hurriedly said, "Xiaoxiu, your health is not good yet. The doctor said it was just a skin injury." I looked at the doctor. "Right." The doctor was looked at by me and could only nod. "Yes." I smiled. "That's okay. Getting engaged every night. Of course my sister has to go." My father looked at me for a few seconds. Finally he said, "It's up to you." I went back to my room. The moment the door closed, all the expressions on my face disappeared. I lived in this room for 17 years, but there is not much that really belongs to me here. There are many dresses in the closet, most of which are picked up by Sherwan. In the photo frame on the desk, there is a family photo of the Sher family. In the photo, Sher father and mother and Sherwan are sitting in the middle. I stood next to it, like a person who was temporarily pulled into the picture. I took out the mobile phone Jiang Qingyan gave me. There is only one contact inside. "Jiang Qingyan." He sent a message. "The wound needs to be treated. Don't touch the water." I looked at it for a long time and replied with 2 words. "Thank you." He came back quickly. "What do you need me to do?" I thought about it. "Help me find a number." I sent him the anonymous text message number I just had. A few minutes later, he replied, "Virtual number. No traceable source." But the location of the text message was near Sher's home. I looked at this sentence, and my back was slightly cold. The person who texted was nearby just now. He watched me return to Sher's house. Perhaps he is still looking here. Jiang Qingyan sent another message. "I'm also investigating your parents' affairs." My heart skipped a beat. I typed and asked, "Why are you checking?" He didn't reply right away. It took a long time for him to send a sentence. "Because I owe you something." I stared at the screen. "Oh me. I don't remember what Jiang Qingyan owes me." Before I could ask, there was a knock on the door. "Xiaoxiu, It's me. It was late. I tucked my phone under my pillow. Come in. It was evening. And he pushed the door open and came in. She changed into light pink pajamas and held a glass of hot milk in her hand. She walked up to me, her eyes still red. Sister. I know you're still blaming me. I looked at her. What do you blame? She bit her lip. Blame me for stealing my parents' attention. Blame me for getting engaged. Blame me for everything. As she said this, tears fell again. But sister, I can't help it. I was not in good health. And I was afraid of losing since I was a child. I know you're stronger than me, so my parents always let me go. She handed me the hot milk. You have something to drink and get some sleep. Don't go to the engagement party tomorrow. There are a lot of people there. I'm afraid you can't stand it. I took the cup but didn't drink it. Won. She looked up at me. I asked, would you be sad if I was really disfigured? The expression on her face stopped. Only 1 second. The next second, her tears fell even more fiercely. Sister, how can you ask like that? Of course I would be sad. You are my sister. I watched her act. She has been like this since she was a child. She is weak, beautiful, and her eyes are red. And everyone will stand on her side. If I argue, I am ignorant. If I am silent, I will acquiesce. She probably thought that I would always be like this. I put the milk on the table. It's too hot. Drink it later. Sherwan's eyes flashed. Okay. She walked to the door and turned back. Sister, tomorrow's engagement banquet is very important to me. You must not embarrass me. Okay. I smiled. Don't worry. She seemed relieved. I added, I won't embarrass you alone. Sherwan's face changed slightly, but I have lowered my head and stopped looking at her. After she left, I poured that glass of milk into the bathroom. White liquid rushes into the drain. I don't know if there's anything in it, but I don't want to gamble. The next evening, the Sher family's engagement banquet began. The location is the most famous hotel in the south of the city. Sherjia rented the entire banquet hall on the lower floor. Flowers, champagne, lights, music, everything was perfect. Sherwan was wearing a white dress and stood in the crowd holding Lu Cheng's hand. She was pale, but she smiled happily. Lu Cheng is the eldest son of the Lu family. Outsiders say that he is gentle and polite. And he is a rare good man, but I know he's not. Half a year ago, he stopped me in the garden. He drank that day and was very close. He said, Shirshu, in fact, you are more suitable to stand by my side than Wan. I pushed him away. He smiled and said, it's a pity. You're just an adopted daughter. Later, Sherwan found out about it. She didn't blame Lu Qing. She only blames me. Since then, her eyes have become colder and colder at me. When I appeared in the banquet hall wearing a long black dress, the voices around me fell silent for a moment. Someone whispered, didn't she just come back from disappearance? I heard it was just a misunderstanding, but her face doesn't look very good. Sherwan also saw me. The smile on her face almost didn't hold back. Shermu came over, lowered her voice and said, how do you wear black? I said, it suits me. Shermu frowned. Today is Wan engaged. Don't steal the limelight. I looked at the evening. She stood in the light like a carefully protected piece of porcelain, and they stand in the shadows, like a knife that has just been pulled out of the mud. I said, don't worry, she must be the protagonist today. My mother didn't understand what I meant, so she only glanced at me warningly. The banquet continued. Lu Qing walked towards me with a wine glass. He was still gentle. Shirsu, it's okay if you're okay. I looked at him. Do you want me to be okay? The smile on his face froze for a moment. Why do you think so? Just ask. He took a step closer. His voice lowered. You've suffered these days. Wan is also worried about you. Don't let some misunderstandings affect her engagement banquet. I laughed. Misunderstanding. Lu Qing looked at me with a little more warning in his eyes. Shirshu, there are some things that have no evidence, so don't talk nonsense. I nodded. You're right. Without evidence, you really can't talk nonsense. Lu Qing breathed a sigh of relief, but he didn't know that what I was waiting for was the moment when the evidence appeared. At 8 o'clock in the evening, the engagement ceremony began. At that time, my father came to the stage to speak. He said he was very pleased to see his daughter find happiness. He said that Sherwan had been in poor health since he was a child, but he was kind and gentle. He said that Lu Qing was stable and reliable, and he was a person worthy of trust. The audience applauded. I sat down and listened quietly. Sherwan stood beside Lu Qing with tears in his eyes. The big screen started playing their love videos. When the first photo appeared, Sherwan smiled sweetly. The second one is Lu Qing wearing a necklace for her. The third photo was supposed to be a group photo of their trip to the sea, but the screen suddenly went black. The music stopped. In the next second, a recording came out. It was Qin Bai's voice. The money was called from Mr. Lu's side. The other party said that as long as Shix's face is ruined, the final payment will be doubled. The banquet hall was instantly quiet. Everyone was stunned. The blood on Sherwan's face disappeared all of a sudden. Lu Qing looked at the big screen suddenly. The recording continues. The contact has changed numbers several times. There was a woman in the middle. She spoke very softly, and someone next to her called her Wan. This time, all eyes fell on Sherwan. It's too late to take a step back. It's not me. It's not me. Lu Qing immediately said, turn it off. This is fake. Sher's father also said angrily, who is controlling the screen? Turn it off right away. The staff ran backstage in a panic, but before he could run, a cold voice came from the door of the banquet hall. Who dares to close? Everyone turned back. Jiang Qingyan stood there. He was wearing a black suit and was followed by several assistants. His appearance changed the air in the entire banquet hall. At that time, my father's face was ugly. Mr. Jiang. This is the family affair of the Shi family. Jiang Qingyan glanced at him. Kidnapping is not a family affair. At that time, my father was blocked and speechless. Jiang Qingyan's eyes crossed the crowd and fell on me. He didn't come over. He just stood there like a calm line. With him, no one dares to move the big screen. I stood up and walked to the front of the stage. All the shots are on me. I heard someone inhale in a low voice. I also heard my mother call me in a low voice. Xiao Su, don't make trouble. I ignored her. I looked at Lu Qing. Mr. Lu. The recording says that the money went from your side. Do you dare to check your account now? Lu Cheng's face turned blue. Shi Su, don't spit blood. I said. I didn't say you are guilty. I just asked you if you dare to check. He didn't speak. Silence is the answer. Shi Wan suddenly cried. She covered her chest, as if she was about to stand unsteadily. Sister. I know you have always disliked me, but you can't ruin my engagement banquet like this. Lu Cheng is my fiancé. Why do you do this to me? She cried beautifully, but this time, no one immediately stepped forward to speak for her, because the recording just now is too clear. Shimu rushed to the stage and hugged Shirwan, and said angrily to me, Shirsu, every night is not in good health. Do you have to force her to death? I looked at her. I was kidnapped for 3 days and you told me to shut up. Now that the evidence has appeared, you say I forced her. My voice is not loud, but the banquet hall was quiet. Everyone can hear it. I continued. I want to ask, whose home is this? Is it a home where the victim cannot speak, or a home where the perpetrator can pretend to be sick? Mu's face turned pale. Shi's father said angrily, enough. I looked back at him. It's not enough. I took out my phone and clicked on the second recording. Inside is the kidnapper's conversation. That Mr. Lu said that the Shi family would suppress the news. The woman said that as long as Shi Su doesn't appear at the engagement banquet, it's fine. Why do you have to ruin your face? She said she was disgusted when she saw that face. End of recording. Shirwan couldn't stand anymore. Lu Cheng was also completely panicked. He wanted to hold Shirwan, but she threw him away. This throw. Everyone saw it. There is no intimacy between them at all. The engagement banquet turned into a trial. The reporter smelled it and began to take pictures. At that time, my father's bodyguard wanted to stop him. Jiang Qingyan only raised his hand, and his people blocked the bodyguards of the Shi family. The scene is out of control, but my heart is very quiet. This is my first step when I come back. I want everyone to know that I'm not the one who is at their mercy. Jiang Qingyan finally walked up to me. He asked in a low voice, can you hold on? I said, yes. The police are already on their way. He said. I looked at him. You called the police. You need evidence to go through formal proceedings. He spoke calmly. I suddenly understood that he was not here to show me the limelight. He is paving the way for me. This is more useful than getting angry for me in public. I whispered, thank you. Jiang Qingyan looked at me. Shirshu. You don't have to say thank you to me every time. I avoided his gaze, because I don't know if I can trust him. The engagement banquet was forced to be cancelled. Lu Cheng was taken away by the police for questioning. Shirwan was sent to the lounge because he was unwell. At that time, my father and mother were busy comforting guests and reporters. I walked to the end of the hallway alone and finally felt tired. The wound on my wrist started to hurt. My shoulders also hurt. I leaned against the wall and exhaled slowly. Jiang Qingyan followed, but stopped 2 steps away. He didn't get too close. He'll take you back. I shook my head. I can't leave yet. The Shi family will not let you go. I know. I looked at the rain outside the window. So I'm going to stay. Jiang Qingyan frowned. Stay and wait for them to hurt you. I turned to look at him. Stay and see what they do next. He was silent. I know he doesn't like my choice, but he didn't order me. After a while, he handed me an ointment. Wipe the wound. I took it. You take this with you. Prepared after coming out of the warehouse. My fingers paused slightly. He didn't mean to ask for credit when he said this, as if it were a matter of course. My heart suddenly felt a little confused. I don't like that feeling, because I know all too well how dangerous it is to rely on one person. The first thing my family taught me was not to believe in anyone's love. I put away the ointment. Jiang Qingyan, why are you helping me? He looked at me. The hallway lights fell on his face, making his eyes look very dark. He said, now is not the time to tell you. I laughed. Then how can you make me believe you? He was not angry. Just say, you cannot believe me, but you can use me. I looked at him and didn't speak. This statement is safer than any promise, because promises change. Interests do not change easily. I said, okay. After returning to Shi's house, it was already late at night. The living room does not have headlights. At that time, my father was sitting on the sofa waiting for me. At that time, my mother was with me at that time. Shirwan's face was pale. and his eyes were red and swollen from crying. When she saw me, she immediately lowered her head. It seems to have been wronged. At that time, my father put the cup heavily on the table. Are you satisfied? I stood at the door. I'm back alive. Aren't you satisfied? At that time, my father's face was blue. Sure, Sue, do you know what the Sure family will face after today? The police investigated, the media questioned, and the partners were suspicious. I said it one by one. Isn't that great? The truth should have been asked. Sure Moo stood up. Xiao Sue, how did you become like this? We have raised you for so many years, and you repay us like this. I looked at her. If you raised me so that I could shut up after being disfigured, then I really can't repay you. At that time, my mother's face turned pale. Sherwan cried and said, Sister, I really didn't harm you, why don't you believe me? I walked up to her. She subconsciously shrank into her mother's arms. I looked down at her. It's late. You'd better pray that the police can't find you. Her tears stopped for a moment. I continued. Because I won't stand in your way for anything anymore. After saying that, I turned upstairs. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the room and reorganized all the clues. Lu Qing, Sherwan, kidnapper, shell company, anonymous text message, and my parents. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I received a new email in my mailbox. The sender remains anonymous. The email does not have a body. There is only one photo. I clicked. It was an old photo. In the photo, it is a black car that has been hit. The front of the car was deformed and the glass shattered to the ground. The rain was mixed with blood and flowed dark on the ground. I recognized it at a glance. It was the car my parents had an accident with. My hand started shaking. Below the photo, there is also a line of words. Do you think the Sure family just wants to harm you? They have long killed your parents. I stared at the line. It was almost dawn outside the window. At this moment, the door was gently pushed open from the outside. Someone walked in. I looked up and saw Sherwan standing at the door. She looked at my computer screen. Her face not weak at all. She said softly, Sister, you finally saw it. Sherwan stood at the door and looked at me quietly. The light from the computer screen shone on her face. Her face was very white. Not sickly white. It's cold white. At that moment, I suddenly felt like I had never really known her. In the past 17 years, I have seen that the time is always the time that needs to be protected. She would cry. She would not be able to breathe. And she would tremble in her mother's arms. She would say in a very soft voice, Sister, I didn't mean to. Then everyone would turn their heads and blame me. But now, she is standing at my door, her eyes calm, and she even has a little smile on her lips. I closed the computer. How much do you know? Sherwan walked in and closed the door. She glanced at my room, as if looking at an old thing that belonged to her. I know more than you think. So you sent text messages and emails. She smiled. Sister, I'm not that kind. I stared at her. She slowly walked to her desk and picked up the family photo. In the photo, she is sitting in the middle and I am standing next to her. She tapped my face with her fingertips. You know what? I hated this photo the most when I was a child. I didn't speak. She continued. Obviously I am the biological daughter of the Sure family. But all the guests like to see you. They say you are quiet, you are sensible, and you must be beautiful when you grow up. She looked up at me. But why are you? I looked at her. Just because of this. You want to ruin my face. Put the frame back on the table in the evening. Not because of this. She approached me and her voice was soft. It's because Jiang Qingyan looks at you. My heart was shocked. What? Do you think I don't know? Sherwan finally had hatred in his eyes. At the charity dinner that day, he was sitting there, and no one was watching. But as soon as you appear, he looks at you. I frowned. That's just once. Once for you, not for me. Her voice grew colder. I have liked Jiang Qingyan for many years. My parents wanted me to marry Lu Qing, because the Lu family was suitable for the Sure family. But I want Jiang Qingyan. As long as I can let Jiang Qingyan look at me, I am willing to do anything. I suddenly understood. The engagement banquet was not the happiness she wanted. It's just her second choice. And my appearance made her feel dazzled even by this choice. I said, Jiang Qingyan has nothing to do with me. Not now. What about the future? Sherwan looked at me with gloomy eyes. You are always like this. You don't fight for anything. But others still look at you. Your parents said you were pitiful, so they adopted you. The teacher said you are smart, so they prefer you. Guests say you are generous, so they praise you. Now even Jiang Qingyan looks at you. She gritted her teeth. Shirshu, I really hate you. I looked at her. The last pain in my heart completely cooled down at this moment. I used to think that she was just spoiled. Not really. She knew exactly what she was doing. She just felt that I was not worthy of resisting. I asked, do you know about my parents' car accident? Sherwan's eyes flashed. She smiled. Sister, if you want to know, just check it yourself. After saying that, she turned to leave. I said, it's late. She stopped. I said, you'd better not touch my stuff again. She looked back at me. Otherwise, I will show everyone what you really are. She stared at me for a few seconds. Then she regained her weak expression. As soon as his eyes turned red, tears fell. The door was opened by her. The next second, she suddenly fell backwards. Sister, don't push me. She fell in the hallway. Loud. At that time, my mother was the first to rush out. Won. At that time, my father also came out of the study. They saw Sherwan sitting on the ground, his face pale and tears streaming down his face. And he saw me standing at the door. The answer seems to be no longer needed. Shermu hugged Sherwan and looked up at me. Shershu, how long will you be in trouble? I stood still. This scene is all too familiar. From childhood to adulthood, it has been like this every time. I pushed it when I fell. Sherwan cried. I bullied him. I was stimulated by my late illness. I have explained it many times. No one believed it. I won't explain it later. But today is different. I looked at my father. There is surveillance in the corridor. At that time, my father's face changed. Sherwan's crying paused. I continued. Do you want to call it out now? Shermu's expression froze. Sher's father said coldly. Enough. In the middle of the night. Don't toss anymore. I laughed. Why not watch it? Didn't you say I pushed her? Sherwan lowered his head and grabbed Shermu's sleeve. Mom. Forget it. I don't want my sister to hate me even more. I looked at her. You don't want to watch it because you know you're acting. Sher's mother said angrily. Shershu. I stopped looking at her and turned back to the room. Before the door closed, I heard Sher father whisper to Sherwan. Don't go to her alone in the future. He didn't understand. He just didn't want to expose it. Because in his heart, time and evening are always more important than me. After dawn, I left Sher's house. No one stopped me. Maybe they all thought I was just going out to relax. I took a taxi to Jiang's group. The front desk saw me and was a little surprised. Miss Sher, do you have an appointment? Before I could answer, the elevator door opened. Jiang Qinjian's assistant came out. Miss Sher, Mr. Jiang is waiting for you. I followed him upstairs. Jiang Qinjian's office is on the top floor. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows is the whole city. When I went in, he was looking at a document. He looked up at me, and his eyes immediately fell on my face. Didn't sleep. I sit down. You don't look like you're sleeping either. He did not deny it. What happened? I handed him the photo of the car accident. He took it. His eyebrows and eyes sunk. Who sent it to you? I don't know. After looking at the photo, he looked at me again. You want to investigate old cases? Yes. Do you know that this will involve a lot of people? I know. It may also involve the Jiang family. I looked at him. This is the first time he has taken the initiative to mention the Jiang family. I asked, so you will stop me? Jiang Qingyan put the photo back on the table. No. Why? He said. The truth should not be stopped. I looked at him. His voice was calm, but I can hear that this sentence is not said casually. He also seems to have been waiting for this truth for a long time. I asked, what do you know? Jiang Qingyan was silent for a moment. Your parents ran a company called Xian Technology. One was stunned. Syrian peace. That's the word in my parents' names. My mother's name is Ning. My father's name is Shi Mingxiu. I didn't originally have the surname Shijia at this time. My time was left to me by my father. Jiang Qingyan continued. That company is doing data security projects. Back then, the project was very valuable, and many companies wanted to buy it, but your parents kept refusing. What happened later? After the car accident, the company quickly completed the equity transfer. Some of the assets flowed into the company controlled by Shijia, and the other part was taken over by an overseas fund. Who signed that equity transfer? Jiang Qingyan looked at me. You. My heart felt like it was hit hard by something. I was 7 years old. So there's something wrong with that signature. I slowly squeezed my hand. I was 7 years old and had just lost my parents. I was lying in the hospital, unable to even write my name. But they used my name to take away everything my parents left behind. Jiang Qingyan said. When I found out about this, I didn't get complete evidence. The real original document was preserved by the lawyer of the year. Who is the lawyer? Shen Huimin. I wrote down the name. Where is he? Retired and living in the suburbs. Someone looked at him. I understand who someone this person is. Time home. I stood up. I want to see him. Jiang Qingyan also stood up. I'll go with you. I looked at him. No. He frowned slightly. I said, Jiang Qingyan, I didn't come to you to save me. I'm here to get information. He looked at me quietly. I know this sentence is a bit cold, but I have to be clear. I can't walk from one cage to another, even if this protective circle looks safe. Jiang Qingyan was not angry. He only said, yes, but you can't go alone. My people follow you in the dark and don't disturb you. I want to refuse, but I know that now is not the time to be strong. I nodded. Okay. Before leaving Jiang, he handed me a document. This is Shen Weiman's information. I took it. He added, Shershu. I stopped. You can win by yourself, but don't think of yourself as someone who doesn't need to live. My fingers tightened. I didn't look back. I know. Actually, I don't know. Over the years, I have lived like an object in debt. Shijia gave me food, and I had to pay it back. When the family gave me tuition, I had to let it. The Shi family gave me a surname, and I couldn't hate it. I didn't understand until now. What they gave me may have been stolen from my parents. In the afternoon, I went to the suburbs. Shen Huimin lives in an old villa. There are many flowers planted in the yard, but no one takes care of them, and the branches and leaves are messy. I rang the doorbell for a long time before someone opened the door. The person who opened the door was a man in his 60s. His hair was gray and his eyes were alert. Who are you? I said. My name is Shershu. When he heard my name, His face immediately changed. He wants to close the door. I raised my hand to block it. Lawyer Shin, he'll just ask you a few questions. His voice trembled. I don't know. I don't know anything. I haven't asked yet. How do you know you don't know? He looked at me, his lips trembling violently. You go. I'm retired. The past has nothing to do with me. I looked at him. I was 7 years old when my parents died. Someone signed the equity transfer in my name. You are the lawyer in charge. You say it has nothing to do with you. Shin Huimin didn't dare to look at me. The documents are legal. A 7-year-old child, shortly after losing his parents, signed a huge equity transfer document. You tell me it's legal. He turned pale. I took a step forward. Lawyer Shin, you have been silent for 17 years. Did you sleep well at night? His hand held the door frame, as if he couldn't stand steadily. After a long time, he whispered, you shouldn't have checked. Why? Because they won't let you go. Who are they? He closed his eyes. The Sher family is just one of them. My heart sank. Who else? He doesn't speak. The phone suddenly rang in the room. Shin Weimin's body trembled. He looked at the landline in the living room, as if he saw something terrible. I realized something was wrong. The phone is still ringing, one sound after another. Shin Huimin did not dare to receive him. I walked over and pressed hands free. A processed voice came from the phone. Lawyer Shin, have the guests arrived? Shin Huimin was in a cold sweat. I didn't speak. The other end of the phone laughed softly. Miss Sher, don't check. Your parents are dead. You should also learn to live a little confused. My blood cooled down little by little. Who are you? The other party did not answer. He only said, go back home. At least you can live there. The phone hung up. Shin Huimin sat slumped on the sofa. I looked at him. Now you still say, it has nothing to do with you. He looked up, his eyes red. I really regret it. He covered his face. That day, before your father's body was buried, the people of the Sher family brought you here. You are too young and the whole person is groggy. They say you are irritated and need to deal with the inheritance as soon as possible. My breathing became very slow. Shin Huimin continued. You didn't write the signature. I know, I can see it. But Mr. Sher brought guardianship documents and hospital certificates. He said it was for your own good. Do you believe it? I took the money. After he said this, the whole person seemed to be 10 years older. I took a lot of money. I thought no one would check again. You were just a child at that time. Everyone said that you would be raised by the Sher family. I looked at him coldly. So you helped them steal my life? Shin Huimin did not refute. I asked, what about the original documents? He looked up at me. No, I said, you're lying. His face changed. I stared at him. People like you, since they dare to collect money, will definitely leave a way out for themselves. If you are afraid of something happening in the future, you must have a backup in your hand. Shin Weimin's lips moved. I said, you can continue to be silent, but if I hand over your behavior to the police, you won't be able to escape either. He closed his eyes. After a few seconds, he finally said, I have a backup, but not here. Where? Bank safe. Give it to me. He shook his head. I can't give it to you now. Someone kept staring at me. As long as I touch that thing, they will know. Then when will you give it? He looked at me as if he had finally made up his mind. 3 days later, I'll take it out in 3 days and give it to you with my own hands. I didn't fully believe him, but that's the only clue at the moment. Before leaving, he suddenly stopped me. Miss Sher. I turned back. Shin Weimin's voice was very low. Your parents were not ordinary car accidents back then. The day before the accident, they came to me. They say, if something happens to them, let me protect you. My heart trembled violently. They know something is going to happen. Shin Huimin nodded. They know someone is forcing them to hand over the project. Who is it? Shin Huimin was about to speak when a soft sound suddenly came from outside the window, like a branch being trampled on. I turned my head abruptly. Outside the courtyard, a black shadow flashed by. Jiang Qinjian's people quickly appeared and chased after them. Shin Huimin turned pale with fright. Did you see it? They won't let me go. And they won't let you go. I looked out the window, then let them come. On the way back to the city, Jiang Qingyan called me. Someone is following you. I know. Are you okay? It's okay. The other side of the phone was quiet for a moment. What did Shin Huimin say? I told him about it. After hearing this, he only said, I will accompany you to the bank in 3 days. This time, I didn't refuse. In the evening, the Sher family had already begun to fight back. There are many press releases on the news. The titles are more dazzling than the other. The adopted daughter of the Sher family was suspected of losing control of her emotions and made a big fuss about her sister's engagement banquet. Wealthy sisters too reneged against each other, and their adopted daughters broke out for many years. The truth of Sher Zu's disappearance for 3 days has become a mystery, and it is suspected that he directed and acted on his own. In the photo, I am standing on the stage with a cold face. Sher Yi leaned into the arms of Sher's mother, crying pitifully. The comments quickly fell to Sherjia. Some people say I'm ungrateful. Some people say that I am jealous too late. Some people say that the adopted daughter is really not good enough. I read them one by one. Then turn off your phone. They want to use public opinion to suppress me. Fortunately, I am no longer the same person who was afraid of being hated before. The next morning, I started a live broadcast. No notice, no filters. I sat in front of the camera, wearing a white shirt and a calm face. There were very few people in the live broadcast room at first, but soon, the number began to rise. The barrage was full of questions. Why did you harm your sister? The Schur family has raised you for so many years. How can you do this? Is the recording at the engagement banquet true? I looked at the camera. I'll only say 3 things today. I took out the first document. First, I was kidnapped, not missing. This is the alarm record. I took out the second document. Second, this is the hospital injury report. I have injuries to my wrists, shoulders, and back. That I took out the third document. Third, this is the transfer path of the shell company under Lu Chang's name. The money went into the kidnapper's account. The barrage was silent for a moment. Then it started exploding. I continued. I don't ask for sympathy from anyone. I only ask the police to investigate. Someone asked, what about that time? Did you deliberately target her? I looked at the camera. If she hasn't done it, she doesn't need to be afraid. If she had done it, she wouldn't have been able to hide behind tears all the time. After saying this, the number of people in the live broadcast room rushed to the highest point. I didn't say more. I turned off the live broadcast and handed over all the evidence to the police and the media at the same time. Half an hour later, public opinion began to reverse. The person who scolded me before deleted the comment. New topics quickly emerged. The kidnapping case is being narrated. Lu Ching transfer record. Recording of the engagement banquet in the evening. Shijia's public relations phone was about to be blown up. At that time, my father called me for the first time. I answered. His voice suppressed anger. Shurshu, you go home immediately. I said. I'm outside. It's inconvenient. What the hell do you want to do? Find out the truth. The truth. He sneered. Do you know what the truth is? What you see now will only kill you. I held my phone. Shen Huimin also said this. The other end of the phone suddenly fell silent. I know. I was right. At that time, my father's voice became very low. You went to find him? Yes. What did he say? I smiled. What are you afraid of saying to him? At that time, my father's breathing was obviously heavier. Shurshu, I warn you not to touch the past again. Why? Because you have a guilty conscience. For your own good. I closed my eyes. This sentence again. They harm me, control me, hide me. In the end, it was all for my own good. I said. Mr. Schur, from today onwards, don't talk to me in your father's tone. You don't deserve it. Then I hung up the phone. In the afternoon, Jiang Qingyan came. I met him in a temporarily rented apartment. This is the place I found after leaving home. Small, but clean. This is the first time I have a space that truly belongs to me. Jiang Qingyan stood at the door and did not come in immediately. Is it convenient? I nodded. He walked in and put a bag of medicine and food on the table. If you broadcast live today, the family will be even more anxious. I know. They may turn you into a mentally problematic person. I looked at him. What do you mean? Jiang Qingyan took out a piece of information. The Schur family contacted a private hospital. The doctor prepares a diagnosis that proves that you have PTSD and paranoid tendencies. I looked at the document. The Schur family really won't let me down. They want to prove that I'm crazy. As long as I'm crazy, everything I say can be denied. I asked, how did you get it? Jiang Qingyan said, I keep people staring at them. I looked up at him. Jiang Qingyan, how long have you been staring at the Schur family? He didn't answer right away. The strange feeling in my heart reappeared. He knows too much. He appeared too timely. He helped me step on the key point every step of the way. It's not like a temporary move. It's more like it started a long time ago. I asked, you said you owe me something. What is it? Jiang Qingyan looked at me. After a long time, he said, you saved me when I was a child. I was stunned. I don't remember. You were very young at that time. He said, the Jiang family is fighting, and someone wants me to die. I was injured and fled to an old warehouse. And you hid me. Old warehouse. Rainy night. Injured boy. A blurry picture suddenly flashed through my mind. I saw my little self standing at the door of an abandoned warehouse, holding a coat in his hand. There was a boy in the corner with blood on his face but cold eyes. I stuffed my coat into him. I said, don't be afraid. I won't tell anyone. The picture quickly disappeared. My head hurts a little. Jiang Qingyan whispered, you got into a car accident later and forgot a lot of things. I looked at him. So you helped me to repay the favor. At first, it was. His answer was honest. Not later. My heart beat half a beat slower. I avoided his gaze. Jiang Qingyan, now is not the time to talk about this. I know. He didn't push me. Just pushed the medicine in front of me. I won't ask you to believe me, but I'll give you everything I know. I looked down at the information. This time, I didn't refuse. 3 days later, Shen Huimin asked me to meet near the bank. Jiang Qingyan's people checked the surroundings in advance. Looks like everything is fine, but I have been uneasy. Shen Huimin was 10 minutes late. I called him. No one answered. After another 5 minutes, I received a message. Come to my house. The documents are not in the bank. I can only give it to you there. I looked at the news and immediately realized that something was wrong. Jiang Qingyan stood beside me. It's a trap, he said. I said, I know. Then don't go. If something really happens to him, The evidence may be broken. Jiang Qingyan looked at me. I also looked at him. Finally he said, "I'll accompany you." When we arrived at Shen Weiman's house, we saw smoke from a distance. The old villa was on fire. Fire rushed out of the window. People were screaming around. And someone called the police. My heart sank violently. Jiang Qingyan grabbed me. "Don't go over." I looked at the fire. If Shen Huimin died, the original evidence could disappear completely. If this was done by the Shi family, they didn't just want to cover it up. They began to silence. The sound of fire trucks came from afar. In the midst of the chaos, I saw a black car parked across the street. The windows are half lowered. There was a person sitting inside. It was late. She was wearing a white dress and no tears on her face. Through the firelight, she looked at me. Then she slowly smiled at me. My phone vibrates at this point. Another anonymous email. The email header is only 4 words. Final evidence. I clicked on the email. Inside is a scan. Equity transfer letter. On the signature bar, my name is clearly written. Current narrative. The date is 17 years ago. That year, I was 7 years old. But that signature, one stroke at a time, is mature, complete, and beautiful. It simply cannot be that I wrote it. I stared at the document. My fingers cold. The fire was reflected on the screen. In the next second, Jiang Qingyan's assistant hurriedly ran over. "Mr. Jiang, Shen Huimin found it. He is still alive." I looked up suddenly. The assistant's face was ugly, but he only said one sentence before he fell into a coma. Jiang Qingyan asked, "What?" The assistant glanced at me and whispered. He said that Miss Shi is not an orphan girl adopted by the Shi family. She is the real heir of Xian technology, and the person who signed the transfer letter back then was in the Shi family. When the fire burned, I really understood for the first time that what the Shi family wanted was not to shut me up. They want me to never have evidence. When Shen Huimin was carried into the ambulance, his face was all black and ash. He is still alive, but his hand was clutching a burned-out leather bag, and no one could break it. The paramedics wanted to take the bag away, but he suddenly woke up for a moment. He saw me, and his eyes crawled out of the fire. He opened his mouth and his voice was hoarse. "Bao, give her." I immediately walked over. His hand let go. I took the bag. The outside of the bag has been burned and deformed, and the zipper is broken. Jiang Qingyan stood next to me and blocked the crowd for me. The black car that Shi Wan was riding in had already driven away. She didn't stay. She flew away like a bird that had just finished watching a good show. But I know she will come back, because she thought the fire had burned all the evidence. She didn't know that Shen Huimin had brought things out. After the ambulance drove away, I stood where I was, my fingers scratching the edge of my burnt bag. Blood droplets oozed out. Jiang Qingyan held my hand. "Don't touch it. It'll come." I didn't let go. "This is my proof." He looked at me. Then he didn't grab it anymore. Just took out a handkerchief and wrapped my fingers. "Then at least don't let yourself bleed." I looked down at his hand. Very stable. From the warehouse to the present, he has been very stable. But the more this happened, the less I dared to get closer. Because I just knew that the Shi family stole my parents' company, stole my identity, and stole my childhood. If I hand over my trust again, I am afraid that I will lose even more completely. I hugged my bag tightly. "I'm going to the hospital and wait for Shen Huimin to wake up," Jiang Qingyan said. "I'll accompany you." This time I didn't refuse. The corridors of the hospital are bright. That kind of bright thorn hurts people's eyes. Shen Huimin was pushed into the emergency room. I sat outside and put my burnt leather bag on my lap. Jiang Qingyan asked his assistant to find a tool and open the zipper little by little. Inside there is a metal box. The outside of the box is blackened but not deformed. I open the box. Inside is a bank safe key, an old photograph, and a small voice recorder. I'll pick up the photo first. In the photo, it is my parents. The father was wearing a dark suit. The mother was wearing a white dress, and the two of them were standing in front of an office building. The mother is holding a little girl in her arms. That little girl is me. I was very young at the time, with 2 pigtails and smiling happily. A line is written on the back of the photo. "Xiao Su, Mom and Dad want you to be free forever." I looked at the lines, and tears almost fell. But I didn't cry. I was crying too late. It's useless to cry now. I want to get back everything they stole from me. Jiang Qingyan saw the photo, and his eyes sank for a moment. He didn't say a word of comfort. He just put the water on my hand. I picked up the voice recorder. The recorder is not broken. I press play. After a burst of noise, Shen Weiman's much younger voice came out. "Mr. Sure, Mr. N. This matter is very risky. If you really want to make a will, it is best to go to a notary office." Then came my father's voice. Calm, clear. "Xiao Su is still small. We can't guarantee that we will be able to protect her as she grows." My mother's voice sounded. "Xiao Su can't be handed over to the Shi family." My heart stopped suddenly. It cannot be handed over to the family at that time. But in the end, I was taken away by the Shi family. The recording continues. Shen Huimin asked, "Do you doubt the Shi family?" My father said, "Not doubting. Shi Banian is already forcing us to sign a transfer agreement." Shi Banian, that was the name of my father. My mother continued, He knew that Xiaoxiu was the only heir. If something happens to us, he will definitely grab custody, Shen Huaimin said. Then who do you want to designate? My father was silent for a few seconds. On the Jiang family's side, someone is willing to help us keep the trust, but I'm not entirely sure yet. The Jiang family is not clean either. The recording broke here. I looked up at Jiang Qingyan. There was no accident on his face. This shows that he has long known that the Jiang family has an intersection with this matter. I asked, do you know this recording? He said, I don't know, but you know that the Jiang family is involved. No apart. I looked at him. He didn't look away from me. Su. I won't lie to you. Someone in the Jiang family has indeed come into contact with your parents, but I was too young at the time to know it completely. Then why didn't you say it earlier? Because there is no evidence. Speaking out will only make you doubt me more. I laughed. Don't I doubt it now? Jiang Qingyan looked at me in a low voice. You can doubt it. I held the recorder. My heart cold and chaotic. I'm not afraid of the house being ruined. They are clearly bad. But Jiang Qingyan is different. He saved me, helped me, protected me. If I finally find out that he is also in this game, I don't know if I can still bear it. The lights in the emergency room went out. The doctor came out. The patient was temporarily out of danger, but inhaled thick smoke and was weak. Don't provoke him. I stood up. Can I see him? The doctor nodded. In the ward, Shen Huaimin was lying on the bed, his face pale. When he saw me, his eyes were first scared, then tired. I put the metal box in front of him. Is this what you want to give me? He nodded. The contents are only part of it. The rest is in the safe. Yes. His voice was soft. But the safe is not the most important thing. The most important thing is a video. My heart tightened. What video? 17 years ago. The law firm was monitored. I held my breath. Shen Huaimin closed his eyes. That day, Sherbanian took you to the law firm. You are being held and sleeping deeply. You still have pinholes in your hands. My hands slowly tightened. They gave me a tranquilizer. I don't know what it is, but you are not sober. Shen Huaimin continued. Sherbanian asked someone to forge your signature. The person who signed was the secretary of the Sher family. When you press your handprint, it is Mrs. Sher who holds your hand and presses it. My mind went blank. I always knew that the Sher family didn't love me, but I didn't expect that Sher Mu also participated. She once hugged me and said, Xiaoxiu, you have to be sensible. She touched my head and said, it's not easy for us to raise you. She said with tears in her eyes, you are the daughter of the Sher family. It turned out that her hands, as early as 17 years ago, pressed my hand and stole everything my parents left me. I asked, where is the video? Shen Huaimin said, I saved one in the bank safe. There is another one, which I gave to someone else. Who? He looked at Jiang Qingyan. Jiang family. The air in the ward suddenly became cold. I slowly turned my head and looked at Jiang Qingyan. He also looked at Shen Huaimin. His brows furrowed, and his voice sank. Who did you give it to? The Jiang family. Shen Huaimin took a few breaths. Jiang Qiming. Jiang Qingyan's eyes finally changed. That's not a guilty conscience. It is disgust. It was like hearing a name that should have died long ago and crawled out again. I asked, who is Jiang Qiming? Jiang Qingyan looked at me. Jiang family side branch. He was also the one who fought with my father for power back then. Shen Huaimin nodded. Your parents originally wanted to ask the Jiang family to keep the trust, but the person who contacted them was not Mr. Jiang's father, but Jiang Qiming. Later I learned that he had a deal with Sherbanian for a long time. After he finished speaking, he coughed in pain. The doctor came in and let us go. I stood outside the ward, and my whole portrait was drenched in ice water. The family stole my life. Someone from the Jiang family helped them hand over the knife. And Jiang Qingyan is the current ruler of the Jiang family. He stood in front of me with a cold face. He said, I will check Jiang Qiming. I said, no. He looked at me. I put the recorder in my bag. I'll check it myself. Time narrates. Jiang Qingyan. I can't believe you now. This sentence is harder than I imagined. He was silent for a long time. Finally he said, okay. I thought he would explain or get angry, but he didn't. He only put a business card in my hand. This is the contact information of my father's old assistant. He handled the contact records of Jiang Jia and Xian Technology back then. You can ask him directly. No need to go through me. I looked down at the business card. I felt a little astringent in my heart. He always does. He never forced me to believe. He just opened the door and let me walk over by myself. I accept the business card. Thank you. He looked at me and said softly, you're saying thank you to me again. I didn't answer. After leaving the hospital, I went back to Sher's house. Not because I wanted to go back. It's because I want to see Sherbanian and Sher Mu. When I pushed the door in, my father was the only one in the living room. He sat on the couch as if he had been waiting for me for a long time. You still know to come back. I stood at the door. Shen Huaimin is not dead. His face did not change, but his fingers moved. I saw it. I continued. He gave me things. At that time, my father raised his eyes to look at me. So what? Aren't you afraid? He sneered. Sher Su, do you really think that if you get a few pieces of old paper, you can ruin the Sher family? I walked up to him. Not a few old pieces of paper. It is evidence that you killed my parents and encroached on Xian Technology. Sher's father stood up suddenly. Shut up. Sher's mother came down from upstairs. Her face ugly. What crazy things are you talking about? I looked at her. For the past many years, I have called her mother. Now I can't say it. I said, 17 years ago, in the law firm. You held my hand and pressed your handprint. Shermu's face turned white for a moment. Her father immediately looked at her. That glance was warned. Shermu quickly stabilized. Who are you listening to nonsense? When you were a child, your memory was already messy. I laughed. You want to say I'm crazy again? At that time, my mother approached me, and her voice was terribly gentle. Xiao Su, we are saving you. After your parents die, you have nothing. If the Shi family hadn't adopted you, you would have been sent to a welfare home long ago. I have nothing. I stared at her. I have shares in Xian Technology, a trust left by my parents, and a will they gave me. It was you who took these and told me that I had nothing. Shermu's lips trembled. At that time, my father raised his hand and slapped me in the face. Loud. My face turned away, and the corners of my mouth tasted blood. The living room was quiet. At that time, my mother did not stop me. The servant stood in the distance, and no one dared to move. I slowly turned my face back and looked at my father. This is not the first time he has hit me, but this is the last time. I wiped the blood from the corners of my mouth. This slap, I will count it in the general account. At that time, my father's eyes were full of anger. You white-eyed wolf. I laughed. I eat your food. Or did you eat my parents' blood? Shi's father's face turned blue and he was about to raise his hand again. This time, his hand was clasped. Jiang Qingyan didn't know when he came in. His face was frighteningly cold. At that time, my father struggled for a moment, but did not break free. Jiang Qingyan, this is the Shi family. Jiang Qingyan's voice was calm. From today onwards, wherever she stands, it is not a place where you can do it. At that time, his father's wrist was buckled white by him. At that time, my mother panicked. Mr. Jiang, Xiaoxiu is our daughter. We just discipline her. I looked at her. Stop saying I'm your daughter. I hate dirt. Shi's mother froze. Jiang Qingyan let go of Shi's father and walked to my side. He didn't ask me if it hurt, because he knows I won't admit the pain here. He only said, let's go. I nodded. Before turning around, I saw Sherwan standing on the stairs. She looked at the red marks on my face, with pleasure in her eyes. I also looked at her. Sherwan, it's your turn. The smile on her face disappeared. That night, Lu Qing took the initiative to contact me. When the number came in, I wasn't surprised. After the engagement banquet, he was questioned by the police. The Lu family also began to cut with him. It will not protect him later. If he wants to live now, he can only look for me. I answered the phone. Lu Cheng's voice was very low. Let's meet at the time. I said, what qualifications do you have to see me? He was silent for a few seconds. I have evidence. About the evening. Half an hour later, I met Lu Qing in a quiet cafe. He lost a lot of weight and his eyes were bloodshot. The first thing he said when he sat down was, kidnapping is not my idea. I looked at him. But the money goes from you. It's the account that the Shi family asked me to leave. He hurriedly said. Sherwan said that as long as you can't appear at the engagement banquet, it's fine. She didn't say she wanted to ruin your face. I sneered. Do you think you'll be clean like this? Lu Cheng's face was ugly. I know I'm not clean, but I don't want to go to jail for her alone. This is the truth. I said. Evidence. He took out his phone and clicked on a recording. Inside was Sherwan's voice. What are you panicking about? As long as you bite you to death. You don't know. What can she do to you? Lu Qing asked. The police have found my company. Sherwan said. Then say you did it yourself. Lu Qing. Don't forget, you chased the times. You have a motive. Lu Cheng's voice changed. You want me to carry it alone? Sherwan sneered. You are not worthy of me. It is your value to be able to memorize it for me once. The recording ends here. Lu Cheng's hands were shaking. She wants to push me out. I looked at him. So you came to me to ask me to save you. I can continue recording. Lu Cheng hurriedly said. She will still contact me now. She thought I didn't dare to resist. I can help you. I didn't agree right away. People like Lu Qing are not trustworthy, but he is worth taking advantage of. I said. I don't protect you. I only promise to hand over your initiative to provide evidence to the police. Lu Qing gritted his teeth. Yes. I stood up. Then start now. You save every word she says. Lu Qing nodded. I turned and left. When I walked to the door, he suddenly stopped me. Time narrates. I stopped. He said, why didn't you fight before? I looked back at him. Because at that time, I thought that forbearance could be exchanged for a little family affection. Lu Qing lowered his head and did not speak again. The next day, Lu Qing sent me a new recording. This time, Sherwan's voice was clearer than last time. She said, it doesn't matter if Shin Huaimin is not dead. We have a second step. As long as it proves that there is a problem with Shi's spirit, all the evidence she says will be questioned. Lu Qing asked. How to prove it? Sherwan said. My mother has already arranged it. Private hospitals will make a diagnosis. At that time, we said that she had delusions after being kidnapped and always thought that we had harmed her. Lu Qing was silent for a moment. What about her parents? Sherwan laughed. The dead cannot speak. A living person cannot speak as long as he becomes a madman. After listening to the recording, I tightened my fingers little by little. Sherwan was more ruthless than I thought. She didn't just disfigure me. She wants me to be a madman in the eyes of everyone. In this way, even if I am alive, I will have no voice. I sent the recording to Jiang Qingyan. He quickly returned the call. What are you going to do? I looked out the window. Let them think I'm really broken. Jiang Qingyan was silent for a few seconds. It's dangerous. I know. They may forcibly take you to the hospital. Then let them bring it. His voice sank. Time narrates. I said softly. Jiang Qingyan, I need them to take action in public. Only then can everyone see what they really want to do. The other end of the phone was quiet. After a long time, he said, I will arrange for people to be in places where you can't see them. I didn't refuse. This time, I needed him, but I will not allow myself to rely on him alone. I started to act according to the plan. I stopped streaming, no longer respond to the news, deliberately let reporters photograph me standing alone on the street, pale and in a trance. I also deliberately appeared at the door of Sherwan's house, and turned around and left after seeing Sherwan. Soon, the news began to change. The state of the narrative is abnormal. The psychological trauma after the kidnapping was serious. The Sher family is suspected of preparing to send their adopted daughter for treatment. They think they are setting up a net, but the one who really closes the net is me. Days later, Shijia announced a press conference. The theme is to explain the recent turmoil. At that time, my mother called me. Her voice was still gentle. Xiaoxiu, come back. We won't blame you. You're just sick. I listened to her finish, then asked, if I go back, will you take me to the hospital? She paused for a second. Xiaoxiu, that's for your own good. I laughed. Okay, I'll go back. After hanging up the phone, I changed into a black suit. I looked at myself in the mirror. The slap marks on his face have disappeared, but I remember that pain. I'll let them remember too. I picked up my bag and got ready to go out. The phone rang suddenly. It is an anonymous email. This time, there was only one sentence in the email. At the press conference, don't believe Jiang Qingyan. I looked at that sentence and my heart sank. The next second, another email came in. The attachment is an old photograph. In the photo, my parents are standing at the door of Xian Technology. Opposite them stood a young man. The photo is blurry, but I can see that the man's eyebrows and eyes are somewhat similar to Jiang Qingyan's. Below the photo reads, the person who forced your parents to hand over the project was surnamed Jiang. I looked at that old photo and my fingers got cold. His surname is Jiang. This word is like a thorn stuck in my heart. I don't want to doubt Jiang Qingyan, but I have no right not to doubt it. My parents died. My life has been stolen for 17 years. Everyone who seems gentle may have a knife hidden. I saved the photo and didn't ask Jiang Qingyan right away. The most important thing now is the press conference. The Sher family has already set up the stage. I can't mess up my game because of a photo. When the car stopped at the door of the press conference hotel, it was full of reporters outside. When they saw me, they immediately surrounded me. Miss Sher, have you had any mental problems recently? Are you really kidnapped? Are you jealous of your sister's engagement? So you caused a storm. I didn't answer. I just walked into the hotel. In the hall, the people of the Sher family had already arrived. At that time, my father was wearing a dark gray suit and his face was heavy. At that time, my mother was sitting on the stage, her eyes red. Sherwan was wearing a white dress. Her face was pale, and she was protected in the middle. It seems that they are the victims. When I appeared, all the shots turned to me. My mother immediately stood up and walked towards me. Xiaoxiu, you're finally here. She wanted to take my hand. I avoided it. Her hand stopped in midair, her face showing a wounded expression. Look, you're like this again. Xiaoxiu, we just want to help you. The reporter began to take pictures. She is very good at acting. She knows how to turn herself into a mother hurt by her adopted daughter. Sher's father came over, lowered his voice and said, don't say anything later. We will announce that you need treatment and then send you abroad. I looked at him. What if I don't want to? His eyes turned cold. You have no choice. I laughed. You always think like that. The press conference begins. At that time, my father spoke first. He said that recent events have had a huge impact on the Sher family. He said that Lu Cheng's matter was still under investigation, and the Sher family believed in the law. He said that Sherwan was not in good health, but he was involved in the turmoil and was very painful. Finally, he looked at me. Xiaoxiu is also our child. After her accident this time, her spirit was greatly stimulated and some unreal thoughts appeared. As a family, we will be responsible to the end. The audience was in an uproar. The mother continued to cry. Xiaoxiu has been sensitive since he was a child. She has been insecure since she lost her biological parents. We thought love could make up for her, but this time we found out that she was very sick. She took out a document. This is a doctor's diagnosis. She has post-traumatic stress and a tendency to be paranoid. The camera was all focused on the diagnosis. Sherwan sat aside and cried softly. Sister, I don't blame you. As long as you get better, I can endure anything. I stood in the audience and watched them quietly. Each of them said it so truthfully. If I wasn't the person involved, I might be moved. At that time, my father turned to me. Xiaoxiu, come here. I apologize to everyone. In the future, We will face it together as a family. Apologize. They want me to admit that I am sick in front of all the cameras. In this way, no matter what evidence I come up with, it will be considered crazy. I walked onto the stage. The reporters fell silent. At that time, my mother reached out to hug me. I gently blocked it. Then I picked up the microphone. I'm here today, not to apologize. At that time, my father's face changed. Xiao. I looked at all the shots off stage. I'm here today to invite everyone to watch a video. The big screen suddenly lit up. At that time, my father turned around suddenly. The staff wanted to turn off the equipment, but there were footsteps at the door. Jiang Qingyan walked in. The man behind him took over the live console. He did not go on stage. He only stood in the audience and looked at me from a distance. His eyes were very heavy. Why? That old photo is still in my phone. I haven't asked him yet, but at this moment, I need this press conference to continue. The first video appears on the screen. The picture comes from the corridor of a private hospital. At that time, my mother was sitting in the doctor's office. The diagnosis has to be written a little more seriously. She said, the point is that she is delusional and her testimony is not credible. The doctor asked, what if she doesn't cooperate with the treatment? Sher's mother said, we are guardians and can send her abroad. The audience exploded instantly. At that time, my mother's face was pale. She stood up. This is a fake. This is fake. I didn't look at her. The second recording began to play. It was a phone call with Lu Qing that night. Sherwan said, living people, as long as they become crazy, cannot speak. As soon as these words came out, the entire hall was silent for a few seconds. Then the reporters pressed the shutter like crazy. Sherwan stood up from his chair. No, not me. It was Lu Qing who framed me. As soon as she finished speaking, a third video appeared. It was Lu Cheng's statement in front of the police. He said, the kidnapping was narrated by Sherwan. The account went from me, but the idea was not from me. She said that as long as Su could not appear at the engagement banquet. Later I found out that she also ruined Shix's face. Sherwan screamed, Lu Cheng, you liar. Sher's father turned around and wanted to leave, but the police had already come in at the door. I looked at him. It's not over yet. A fourth piece of evidence emerged. It is a video of Shen Weiman's hospital bed. His face was bad, but his voice was clear. 17 years ago, the equity transfer document of Xian Technology was not signed by Su himself. She was only 7 years old at the time and was in a calm state. The signature was forged by the secretary of the Shi family, and the handprint was pressed by Mrs. Shi holding her hand. As the handling lawyer, I accepted the benefits of Shi Banian and participated in the illegal transfer. At that time, the mother's leg went weak and she almost fell. At that time, my father's face was blue. I finally looked at them. You didn't adopt me. You are taking me away. Shi's father said angrily. Do you think you can condemn me with just the words of an old man? I nodded. Of course it's not more. The equity transfer letter appeared on the screen. The flow of funds, and the asset division record of Xian Technology. Every document clearly shows that after the parents' car accident, the biggest beneficiary is the Shi family. I said, after my parents died, the Shi family got the core assets of Xian Technology. You signed for me as guardians and used the money to support me. Then tell me, I owe you. My voice is very steady. Shi Banian, Lin Ji. You didn't support me. You just used my parents' money to raise a witness that you could control. Shi's mother covered her face and cried. Xiao, it's not like this. We really hurt you too. I looked at her. You love me, so you drugged me and pressed my handprint. She was speechless. Sherwan suddenly rushed in front of me. Her eyes were red, and the weakness on her face was completely shattered. Shu, are you satisfied? You ruined everyone. I looked at her. I ruined you. She cried and shouted. If you don't come back, if you are good, nothing will happen. I laughed softly. So it's wrong to live. She stared at me. Yes. Why do you want to live? Why do you have to stand in front of me every time? The audience fell silent. This sentence is too clear. All the reporters heard it. Sherwan also reacted. Her face turned pale and she immediately stepped back. No, I didn't mean that. I put out the last recording. That was Qin Bai's testimony. The contact did mention the late night. She said that Shirzu's face was too eyesore. As long as you ruin your face, the money will double. Sherwan couldn't stand it all. The police stepped onto the stage. Sherwan, please come with us. At that time, his mother rushed over to stop him. She's not in good health. You can't take her away. The police said, we will arrange for doctors. When Sherwan was taken off the stage, he was still looking at me. That look was hateful and afraid. Sister, do you think you won? I didn't answer, because I know that this is not the end. At that time, my father had not yet fallen. The line of the Jiang family has not been untied either. After the press conference, the Shi family was completely in chaos. The police began to investigate the kidnapping case, the forgery of documents, and the old case of Xian Technology. Lu Cheng was formally controlled. Sherwan was taken away for questioning. Shi's mother was also restricted from leaving on suspicion of forging medical certificates and embezzling property. At that time, my father was still standing on the stage. He didn't break down like everyone else. He just looked at me coldly. Shu, you really look like your father. I said, thank you, but your father died. His voice was low. If a smart person doesn't know how to stop, He will die. Jiang Qingyan stepped onto the stage and stood beside me. If you threaten, keep it and tell the police. Shi's father looked at him and suddenly smiled. Jiang Qingyan, what are you pretending to be clean? My heart sank. At that time, my father looked at the reporter and then at the police. You all want to know the old case of Xian technology. Then go check the Jiang family. If you only check the Shijia, you will never be able to find it completely. Jiang Qingyan's face was very cold. Shi's father continued. I was not the only one who forced Shi's parents to hand over the project. The Jiang family also has a share. Jiang Qiming is just a person on the surface. And it is the Jiang family who really takes away the core data of Xian. The reporters boiled again. All the shots turned to Jiang Qingyan. I also looked at him. He didn't look at the reporter. He only looked at me. At that moment, I suddenly remembered the photo in the anonymous email. The man who looked like Jiang Qingyan opposite my parents. I asked him, is what he said true? Jiang Qingyan's Adam's apple moved. Sure Su. The Jiang family does have a problem. My heart feels like it's being suppressed. You already knew. I know Jiang Qiming has a problem, but I haven't found full evidence yet. So you have been helping me so that I can help you clean up the Jiang family. After this sentence was spoken, Jiang Qingyan's eyes hurt slightly, but he didn't deny it quickly. His hesitation is part of the answer. I took a step back. He wanted to reach out, but stopped again. I said, don't touch me. Jiang Qingyan's hand froze in midair. It's noisy around. The reporter was asking. The police were maintaining order, and his father was sneering, but I only heard my own heartbeat. One time. Another time, like the sound of a car accident a long time ago, I turned around and left the conference hall. Jiang Qingyan didn't catch up. I walked outside the hotel and the rain had just fallen. It was as cold as the day I was kidnapped. I stood in the rain, took out my phone, and opened the anonymous email. Below the photo, there is also a line of small print that I didn't notice before. I want to know what Jiang Qingyan is hiding. Tonight at 10 o'clock. Go to the old site of Xian. I looked at the line. Suddenly I understood that this person had been luring me. From car accident photos, to equity documents, to old photos of the Jiang family. He didn't just help me. He wanted me to turn against Jiang Qingyan. But even if I know it's a game, I have to go, because I need the truth. At 10 o'clock in the evening, I went to the former site of Xian Technology alone. That building has long been abandoned. Only half of the sign at the door remains. The rain hits the broken glass. I walked in, and the flashlight of my phone shone on the dust all over the floor. In the center of the hall, there is a black document bag. I walked over and was about to bend down to pick it up. Footsteps suddenly came from behind him. I turned around abruptly. In the darkness, a man slowly came out. He was wearing a gray coat with a very shallow smile on his face. His eyebrows and eyes are exactly the same as the man in the photo. He said, Miss Shi, you are finally here. I clenched my phone. Who are you? He smiled. My name is Jiang Qiming. My heart sank. Jiang Qiming looked at me in a gentle voice. The real cause of your parents' deaths. Jiang Qingyan doesn't dare to tell you. He took a step closer to me, because the core data back then is now in Jiang Qingyan's hands. When Jiang Qiming finished saying that, I didn't move. It's cold in an abandoned building. The rain blew in through the broken window and fell on my face. I looked at the man in front of me. He was like a snake that had been hiding in the shadows for many years. Now he has finally appeared. But he appeared too coincidentally. Every step is too coincidental. I asked, did you send those anonymous emails? Jiang Qiming smiled. I'm just helping you see the truth. The truth. I looked at him. Or do you want me to hate Jiang Qingyan? His smile faded a little. Shouldn't you hate him? He knew that the Jiang family had taken the data of Xian technology, but he never told you. He approaches you and protects you only because of guilt. I didn't speak. He continued. Shu, you are very smart. You should understand that a person like Jiang Qingyan will not be good to a woman for no reason. He helped you to make up for the Jiang family's debts. This sentence is like a knife, but I didn't let it stab in, because I have been deceived by the Shi family for 17 years. I will no longer listen to just one person. I said, evidence. Jiang Qiming raised his eyebrows. What? You said the core data is in Jiang Qingyan's hands. What about the evidence? He smiled and pointed to the bag of documents on the ground. See for yourself. I bent down to pick up the bag of documents. Inside are several copies, a USB flash drive, and an old contract. The contract states that the core data of Xian technology has been transferred to Jiang's laboratory through an intermediary company. The signatory is Jiang Qiming. The other column is the signature of the person in charge of the Jiang family project. That signature is not Jiang Qingyan. It is Jiang Qingyan's father, Jiang Chengyuan. My fingers tightened little by little. Jiang Qiming looked at my expression and was very satisfied. Did you see it? I'm not alone. The Jiang family wanted Xian from the beginning. I looked up at him. If the Jiang family really got the data, why did you give me the evidence now? His eyes changed slightly. I continued. You have been hiding for 17 years, and now the Shi family is about to collapse. And you suddenly come out to help me, not because of the discovery of conscience. Jiang Qiming looked at me and smiled even deeper. You are harder to deceive than your father. I said, what do you want? He finally stopped pretending. I want Jiang Qingyan to step down. I had no accidents. Jiang Qiming walked to the window and looked at the rain outside. The Jiang family should have had my place. But as soon as that kid Jiang Qingyan took the position, he cleared all my people. He checked the old accounts, the funds, and all the projects of the year. He wants to kill me all. He turned to look at me. Now only you can help me. You are the heir to Xian technology. As long as you publicly accuse the Jiang family, Jiang Qingyan will be dragged into the water. I looked at the contract in my hand. And then, you take over the Jiang family. He did not deny it. I can help you get back all the rights and interests in Syria. The family will be over. And Jiang Qingyan will also be finished. You will get everything you deserve. I laughed. Do you think I will cooperate with the people who harmed my parents? The smile on Jiang Kaiming's face disappeared. The person who harmed your parents is Sherbanian. What about you? I looked at him. Are you just standing by and watching? His eyes cooled. Miss Sher, don't ask too much about some things. Knowing too much is not good for you. That's the sentence again. Everyone who has harmed me likes to say this. Don't check. Don't ask. Don't know. They are not afraid of me getting hurt. What they fear is that if they know the truth, they will pay the price. I held the bag of documents in my arms. Then I want to know. Jiang Qiming looked at me, his voice cold. You came alone today. Do you really think you can get out? Footsteps were heard all around. Several men came out of the darkness. I didn't panic. I just looked at Jiang Qiming. How do you know I'm alone? His expression froze. In the next second, the lights came on outside the building. Strong light shines through the broken window. Jiang Qingyan's people rushed in and directly controlled the men. Jiang Kaiming's face sank suddenly. Jiang Qingyan walked in from the door. His suit was wet from the rain, and his eyes were as cold as ice. He glanced at me first. After confirming that I was not injured, I looked at Jiang Qiming. You still like to use the old way. Jiang Qiming sneered. You follow her. Jiang Qingyan said. I didn't follow her. I took over. I informed him. Jiang Qiming was stunned. I took out my phone. It shows the call records between me and Jiang Qingyan. From the moment I entered the old site, the call was not hung up. Jiang Kaiming's face changed completely. I said, you keep sending me emails, which makes me suspicious of Jiang Qingyan. Your goal is too obvious. He stared at me. You don't doubt him. I doubt it. I looked at Jiang Qingyan. But doubting him doesn't mean I have to believe you. Jiang Qingyan's eyes moved. I didn't look away. I will investigate your Jiang family's affairs. You owe me an explanation, and I will ask for it too. But until then, I won't let the people who really harm my parents run away. Jiang Qiming suddenly smiled. The person who really harmed your parents. Su, do you think I will admit it? You don't need to admit it. I raised my phone. Every sentence you just said has been recorded. You admit that you want Jiang Qingyan to step down. Admit that you hid the evidence of the year. And admit that you know where the Syrian security data is. Jiang Kaiming's face was blue. That's not enough to convict. Jiang Qingyan spoke. Then add this. The assistant behind him took out a document. Jiang Qiming, we have already obtained the record of your transfer of Xian technology assets through overseas funds. There is also your account dealings with Sherbanian. Jiang Kaiming's expression finally cracked. Impossible. Jiang Qingyan said coldly. I have been checking you for 6 years. 6 years. I looked at Jiang Qingyan. It turned out that he didn't start investigating in the past few days. He has long been on this dark road. Jiang Qiming suddenly rushed over and wanted to grab me. Jiang Qingyan was faster than him. He grabbed Jiang Qiming's hand and pressed the person to the ground. That was heavy. Jiang Qiming snorted in pain. The police quickly entered. When Jiang Qiming was taken away, he was still laughing. He looked at me. Su, do you think it's over if you catch me? The core data has been used. Your parents have been dead for 17 years. And they can't come back. I looked at him. I know they won't come back. My voice was calm. That's why I want you to live and pay the price. Jiang Qiming was taken away. The abandoned building is quiet again. The rain is still falling. Jiang Qingyan stood in front of me. He looked at me as if he had a lot to say. I'll speak first. Now, explain. He nodded. Okay. We went to his car. The inside of the car was quiet. He handed me a tablet. Inside is all the information. No cuts. There is no hiding. I look at them one by one. 17 years ago, the data security project developed by Xian Technology was indeed targeted by many capitals. Sherbanian wanted shares. Jiang Qiming wants core data. The two secretly cooperated. Jiang Qingyan's father, Jiang Chengyuan, first contacted my parents, but he wasn't trying to grab the project. He wanted to remind them because he found out that Jiang Qiming had made private transactions. In that old photo, the person who met my parents was not Jiang Qiming. It is Jiang Chengyuan. Because the photo is blurry and the father and son have similar eyebrows and eyes, Jiang Qiming deliberately used it to mislead me. The day before the car accident, my parents were going to hand over the evidence to Jiang Chengyuan, but the news can be leaked. The car accident happened. My parents died. Xian Technology was swallowed up by the Shijia. The core data was transferred by Jiang Qiming through overseas funds, and then entered Jiang's old laboratory through shell companies. After Jiang Chengyuan found out, he wanted to track it down. As a result, he was also designed by Jiang Qiming, lost the real power of the Jiang family, and later died of illness. Jiang Qingyan took over the Jiang family as an adult, and only then did he reinvestigate the matter. After reading the last document, my fingers went numb. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Jiang Qingyan was silent for a few seconds. Because I'm afraid that if you know that the Jiang family is involved, even I will hate it. I looked at him. He did not justify himself. I also have selfish intentions. He said, I want to get the evidence in place before you know. This way you at least don't have to face only a vague Jiang family. But you still hid it from me. Yes. He admitted it quickly. Sure, Sue. I was wrong about this. The car was quiet. I looked out the window. The rain draws lines on the glass. I think of that rainy night when I was a child. I gave the coat to a wounded boy. I said to him, don't be afraid. Later, I forgot about him, but he didn't forget me. He spent many years looking for me, but he also chose to hide it because he was afraid of losing me. It's not perfect, but people are inherently imperfect. I can't ignore his fault just because he saved me, nor can we deny everything he has done because of his fault. I said, Jiang Qingyan, I can't forgive you now. His eyes darkened for a moment. I know, but I will continue to investigate. At the end of the investigation, if you or the Jiang family have any concealment, I will not be soft. Okay, you can't decide anything for me. Okay, I looked at him. Also, don't say anything like protecting me. He paused. Then what did I say? I thought about it. Talk about cooperation. Jiang Qingyan looked at me, and after a long time, he whispered, okay, collaboration. At that moment, the wall in my heart did not fall, but it opened a door. After Jiang Qiming was arrested, the old case advanced rapidly. Shi's father's capital chain was seized. Lu Qing provided more transfer records. After Shen Huimin woke up, he opened the bank safe in the presence of the police and lawyers. It contained law firm surveillance backups, original wills, trust documents, and handwritten letters left by my parents. In the letter, they wrote it very clearly. If something happens to them, I am the only heir to Xian technology. No guardian can transfer equity on my behalf. All transfers must be confirmed by me when I become an adult. The equity transfer of the Shi family was invalid from the beginning. This letter became the last stone that overwhelmed the Shi family. On the day my other was formally investigated, she asked to see me. I went, not because of soft-heartedness. It was because I wanted to see her lose that motherly mask. Through the glass, she was wearing gray clothes and her hair was messy. When she saw me, she cried first. Xiaoxiu, I know I'm wrong. I picked up the phone. Her voice came out. I couldn't help it at that time. Your uncle Shi said that if you don't do this, the Shi family will be over. I'm just a woman. What can I do? I listened quietly. She continued. I took care of you too. You had a fever when you were a child, and I was watching over you. When you go to school, I will send you off. You can't deny me the kindness I have done to you because of one thing. I looked at her. One thing. She stopped crying. I said, you stole my parents' company by pressing my handprint. You asked me to stop for Sherwan. You know the kidnapping and shut me up. You still want to prove that I'm crazy. I asked her word by word. Which one is a trivial matter? At that time, the mother's lips trembled. Xiao Su, I really treated you as a daughter. I laughed. You used me as a tool. If the tool is used for a long time, it will also have feelings. But that's not love. She burst into tears. This time, I didn't have any fluctuations. I hung up the phone, got up and left. At that time, my father did not ask to see me. He knew better than my mother, and it was useless to beg me. But Sherwan has always wanted to see me. I declined twice. The third time, I went. She lost a lot of weight. No makeup, no white dress, no tears. She sat across from me, her eyes empty. Shirshu, I lost. I said, you didn't lose to me. She looked up at me. I said, you lose to your own greed. She smiled. You speak like a trial now. I'm just telling the truth. She looked at me and suddenly asked, if I had been nice to you when I was a child, would you let me go? I didn't answer right away. Sherwan continued, if I really treat you as a sister, will you give Jiang Qingyan to me? Will you give me the Shi family? I looked at her. At this moment, she still didn't understand. I said, Jiang Qingyan is not a thing. I can't let it. The Shija family was never mine. I just got my parents' things back. Sherwan's eyes were red. But I have only had the Shi family since I was a child. If the Shi family is gone, what else do I have? I said, that's a question you should ask your parents, not me. She suddenly became excited. Why do you have to destroy me? I just want to keep my stuff. I stood up. A lot of the things you have were stolen from me. Now I'm just getting it back. Sherwan looked at me, and tears finally fell. This time, she had no one to hold. No one spoke for her. No one helped her push the mistake on me. I turned and left. When I walked to the door, she suddenly stopped me. Shirshu. I stopped. Her voice was soft. Do you hate me? I thought about it. I hated it before. What now? Now you are just part of what I want to liquidate. This is colder than hatred. It is also more free. The case continued to ferment for 3 months. At that time, the family went bankrupt and liquidated. At that time, his father was prosecuted for a number of economic crimes and old cases. Shirmu was charged with forging documents and aiding in the misappropriation of assets. Shirwan was prosecuted for participating in kidnapping, falsifying psychiatric diagnoses, and malicious framing. Lu Qing will have a reduced sentence because he took the initiative to provide evidence. But he could not retreat intact. Jiang Qiming was found to have more overseas funding problems and was also formally arrested. The Jiang family experienced a huge shock. Jiang Qingyan personally disclosed all the information about the illegal receipt of Xian data by Jiangjia's old laboratory. He did. NT cover it up for the Jiang family. Jiang suffered great losses as a result. The stock price fell. The project was stopped, and the board questioned him. Some people say that he ruined the interests of the Jiang family for a woman. When I saw the news, I called him. Is it worth it? He said on the other end of the phone. Not for you. I was silent. He said, it was the Jiang family who owed Suan in the first place. I looked out the window and felt very quiet. Jiang Qingyan, you actually don't have to do this. I know. Then why? He paused for a few seconds. Because I want to stand in front of you and no longer carry debts. This sentence is very light, but it fell into the water like a stone. It didn't break up for a long time. Half a year later, court judgments came down one after another. The invalid equity transfer of Xian Technology was revoked. My shares and trust assets are back in my name. That day, I went to my parents' graves. I put the verdict in front of the tombstone. The wind is light. The cemetery is quiet. I knelt down and touched my parents' names on the tombstone. Dad, Mom, I'm back. I finally cried. Not a cry of collapse. It was crying that had been walking for a long time and finally could stop. Jiang Qingyan stood not far away and did not disturb me. When I stood up, he handed me a tissue. I took it. Thank you, he said. I can say thank you this time. I couldn't help but laugh. This is the first time in the past 6 months that I have laughed in front of him. He looked at me with deep eyes. What do you want to do next? I looked at the tombstone. Restart Syria. He had no accidents. Do you need to invest? I looked at him. Mr. Jiang, cooperation is possible, but I want to hold. He laughed too. Of course. I reached out. Then officially cooperate. He held my hand. This time, I didn't hide. A year later, Xian Technology was relished. On the day of the press conference, I stood on stage in a white suit. The audience was full of reporters, investors and partners. Everyone used to say that I was the adopted daughter of the Shi family. Now they call me Shi Su, the daughter of the founder of Xian Technology and the new CEO. I stood under the light and looked at the photos of my parents when they were young on the screen. I didn't tremble anymore. The host asked me, Mr. Sure, if you were asked to say a word to your past self, what would you say? I looked at the camera. After a long time, I said, don't be afraid. The audience fell silent. I continued, what you lose may not come back right away. The person who hurts you may not necessarily pay the price immediately, but you can't give up on yourself, because one day, you will find the evidence with your own hands, open the door with your own hands, and walk out with your own hands. The most important thing is not that someone will save you. Most importantly, you will rescue yourself. Applause rang out. I looked at the audience. Jiang Qingyan sat in the first row. He didn't stand behind me to block the wind like he used to. He sat there and watched me win. After the press conference, he waited for me backstage. He held a bouquet of white roses in his hand. I looked at the flower and then at him, celebrating the success of the cooperation. It's also a celebration of your new life choice, he said. I took the flowers. Jiang Qingyan, I don't need you to save me. I know. I won't be anyone's subordinate either. I know. If you lie to me one day, I will leave immediately, he said. Okay. I looked at his serious and nervous expression, and suddenly felt very soft. I took a step closer. But now, I want to try. Jiang Qingyan's eyes lit up slightly. What to try? I said, try to choose you. He didn't hug me right away. He just asked in a low voice, is it okay? I nodded. The next second, he reached out and hugged me. This hug is light, but it is very stable. I leaned into his arms and heard my heartbeat. It is no longer a sound of fear. It is the sound of living. After a long time, he asked me, Shishu, do you remember that warehouse? I said, I remember. He said, when you saved me that year, it was also raining. I smiled. Then you're lucky. Met me both times. He whispered. Yes. I looked up at him. Jiang Qingyan, from today onwards, we will not talk about repaying kindness, nor about debts. He looked at me. I said, just talk about choice. He held my hand. Okay. The sun was falling outside the window. I finally understood that freedom is not without a past. Freedom is something I carry with me and can still move forward. I have been kidnapped, betrayed, used as a tool, and stolen from me. But that wasn't my end. My ending, written by myself.